Well, I have some good news for you, and I have some bad news for you. The good news is, as Wayne mentioned, it is Christmas, and I know how much some of you love your Christmas celebration, so we've been singing about Christmas. It looks like Christmas. We're going to start preaching about Christmas. The bad news is, this is going to be the single most depressing Christmas sermon you've ever heard in your life. Just being honest up front, some of you are going, how can you preach a depressing Christmas sermon? Just trust me, it's going to be a long one. So our theme throughout Christmas is this idea of shine. The interplay between light and darkness is one of the main themes of the Christmas season. That light comes shining into a dark world. But the problem is, in order to really appreciate the light, you have to first understand the darkness, right? Let me give you an example. So if I take my lantern here, and I turn on this candle on the inside, and set it, whoa, that was so bright, wow. You see it just fill the room up with light? No, you didn't. Of course you didn't. Why? Because this room is just filled with lights. We got Christmas tree lights, we got overhead lights, we got light coming through the windows. Of course, you can't, that added zero light to the room. See, to understand and appreciate the power of the Christmas story, to understand John 1, where it says light shines in the darkness and the darkness cannot overcome it, to understand how powerful it is that Jesus calls himself the light of the world, you first have to understand just how dark the world is without him. So we're going to start in Micah chapter 7 this morning. It's a bit of an unorthodox Christmas passage, but I encourage you to turn to Micah chapter 7. We're just going to walk through it verse by verse together this morning, step by step, little bit by little bit. And what we find in Micah 7 is kind of the climax of his book. You know, Micah is renowned for its messianic prophecies. It points us to Jesus. Micah 5 talks about the leader coming out of Bethlehem. Micah 6 talks about this time when people will walk humbly with their God. And Micah 7 is kind of the end of the book. He's kind of wrapping up his thoughts, and he begins to lament or be sorrowful about the bad things that are happening in his world, about just how dark things have gotten. So we're going to dig in, Micah chapter 7. We're just going to start in verse 1 together this morning. How sad for me! For I am like one who, when the summer fruit has been gathered, after the gleaning of the grape harvest, finds no grape cluster to eat, no early fig which I crave. So his opening metaphor is this. He's like a man who's gone out to pick corn in December. You gonna go pick corn today? There's no corn left. They already came and harvested all. And he uses the imagery of the Middle East of an empty grapevine. I went out walking into the vineyard and I looked where the grapes are supposed to be. I looked where the cluster of fruit was supposed to be hanging, and there was nothing there. I went to get some figs for dinner, and there was none to be had. In short, I went looking for righteousness. I went looking for goodness. I went looking for people who were living holy lives, and I couldn't find them. I looked in all the places it was supposed to be. I looked in the priesthood, where they're supposed to honor God, and there was no righteousness. I looked in the Levites, these people who do the work of the temple, and there was no righteousness. I looked at the kings who are supposed to govern the people and lead them to follow God, and there was no righteousness. I looked, and it was like an empty grapevine. There was nothing left. All of the goodness is gone from my country. See? Told you it was going to be exciting and depressing. Verse 2. Godly people have vanished from the land. There is no one upright among the people. All of them wait in ambush to shed blood. They hunt each other with a net. Godly people have vanished from the land. There is no one upright among the people. Have you ever seen one of those pictures at a sporting event where they take like a picture of the student section? And like everybody in the picture is decked out in like their red and gray or their blue and yellow or their black and gold. And it's like this same color scheme. And there's like the one guy in the middle who you can tell bought tickets from the scalper outside. Well, it looks a little bit like this. You pray for that guy's safety, right? Okay, this is from a game at Michigan that Ohio State won. So you see all of the depressed faces in yellow and blue, and the one guy with his hands up, you're like, that guy's going to get beat up on his way out. It's just not going to go well for him. That is the picture Mike is trying to paint. There's no one else obedient to God. All of the upright people have left. He looks around and all he sees, and listen, I'm not saying that Michigan people are ungodly and Ohio State people are the good people. It's just a picture. We all know plenty of Ohio State fans who are jerks, okay? But Micah says, I looked around and all I saw were the ungodly. Anyone who had any hint of righteousness or holiness or love or mercy had vanished from the land. I'm the only one left speaking the words of God. We're only 2 verses in. It's getting good, isn't it? Verse 3. Both hands are good at accomplishing evil. The official and the judge demand a bribe. When the powerful man communicates his evil desire, they plot it together. Have you ever met someone who's truly ambidextrous? They can actually do everything equally with both hands. I know some folks who are close, but most of us, do me a favor. The next time you go get a nice steak dinner at a steakhouse, just try cutting the steak with the wrong hand and see how well it goes for you. Better yet, the next time you get a spaghetti dinner somewhere, eat it with your off hand and see how much of it ends on your lap. Well, most of it ends up on my lap anyway, but that's completely beside the point. Most of us are so dominant with one hand that to do anything with our other hand, to have to type or have to type on our phone or answer the phone with the wrong hand or steer our car with the wrong hand or write our name with the wrong hand is nearly impossible for us. In fact, the greatest athletes in the world, you take like an NFL quarterback who can sling the ball 50, 60 yards down the field, beautiful spiral, it looks like poetry in motion, and say, hey, here, throw the ball with your other hand. And all of a sudden, they look like a middle schooler who hasn't grown into his body yet, like all legs and arms, and the ball falls 8 yards. Like, you just can't do it. But there are a few folks, just a few. They can swing a golf club with either hand. It's really quite impressive. They write equally well or equally poorly, depending on the case, with both hands. And they're what we call ambidextrous. They can do things with both hands equally well. It's a special talent, except when the statement is you can sin equally well with both hands. Then I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing. He says they sin with both hands. The right hand takes money and steals because it's greedy, and the left hand oppresses and hurts people because it's proud. The right hand demands a bribe, and the left hand holds a grudge. The right hand holds hatred, and the left hand holds anger. I sin with both hands equally well. My evil is so deep that both hands are good at accomplishing evil. It's not the prettiest picture he's painting of his day. Here's verse 4. The best of them is like a briar. The most upright is worse than a hedge of thorns. The day of your watchman, the day of your punishment is coming. At this time, their panic is here. You ever condemn someone with faint praise? Or we talk maybe about a backhanded compliment? When you say the best of them is like a briar, it's kind of like saying, hey, look, you're the tallest leprechaun, right? Oh, look, she's like a quarter of an inch taller. That makes her like 36 inches instead of 35 and a half. Good for you. I mean, technically it's something. It's like saying, hey, you have a good hairstyle for a bald guy. I mean, it's technically it's something, but it's not really. The amount of wives rubbing their husband's head is amusing to me right now. There are like 6 people who just went like this. I'm right there. I got you. Technically, I guess it's something to be the tallest leprechaun, but it's not really a compliment. I guess technically it's something to be the most upright. But Micah says his generation is so corrupt, his generation is so wicked, that even the most upright among them, even the most righteous among them, are like briars and thorns. The holiest people he can find are still prickly and abrasive and hateful and vindictive. Even the best in the kingdom is far from God. Verse 5 makes things just even better. He says, do not rely on a friend. Don't trust a close companion. Seal your mouth from the woman who lies in your arms. Surely a son considers his father a fool. A daughter opposes her mother, and a daughter-in-law is against her mother. A man's enemies are the men of his own household. For what it's worth, Jesus quotes this verse in the New Testament. You know the passage in Matthew where Jesus says, I've come not to bring peace, but a sword? And right after that he says, for I will turn the hearts of a man against his father, the hearts of a daughter against her mother, of a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Well, that one actually still happens. So, Jesus takes these words and applies them to his own ministry. And what Jesus means when he uses them is that following me is going to cost you something. There are going to be some among you that if you decide to be obedient to Christ, your father's not going to want anything to do with you. Your daughter is going to look at you cross-eyed because how could you believe that nonsense? And Jesus is taking these words straight out of Micah 7 and saying, listen, if you follow me, it may cost you something. And so there are some people that think that's Micah's original intent here. That what Micah's trying to say is, listen, if you follow God, the city's so wicked they'll turn against you. If you actually worship the one true God, everybody else is going to hate you. Because if that's how Jesus used the verse, then maybe that's what it means in its original context. But I don't know. After reading it verse by verse, I kind of come to the other conclusion. That their culture is so depraved and so far from God and so opposed to the work of God that you can't even trust your spouse. You heard what he said, don't trust the woman who lies in your arms because she'll stab you in the back the moment she gets a chance. Your daughter is going to turn against you. Your son is going to rebel against you. To me, it describes a culture that is so devoid of holiness, so empty of godliness, that they don't even like their families. That even in the midst of the family, there is anger and selfishness and greed and conniving and plotting and backstabbing. That even there, the one place that you should be protected and loved, the love is gone and only bitterness exists. Micah has described this world where there is no one righteous, no one holy, no one doing the work of God. And he ended by saying, beware, watchmen, the day is coming, your punishment is near. God is going to punish them for their sinfulness. We're going to keep reading verse 7 and 8 in just a minute. But before we do that, I just want to pause. I need to make it clear that Micah chapter 7 was written at a specific time to a specific group of people about a very specific instance. It was written in the 6th century BC to the people of Israel who had rebelled against God. If you're plotting it on a timeline in terms of what was happening historically, the northern half of Israel has been taken away to be slaves. The southern half of Israel has survived, but they're about 120 years from going away to be slaves themselves. That's what Micah's writing about. It is about 6th century BC Jerusalem. But just because it's about that doesn't mean it's not for us. Those words are not about our country. They're not about what's going on in our world. They're specifically about what was happening 2,500 years ago in the Middle East. But they are definitely applicable for our country and our world and our church. Are there not days where you look around at our world and think to yourself, where have all the godly men gone? Are there not days where, like Micah, you walk to the vineyard and you go, this is a place where there should be integrity. That guy's been put in leadership. That guy's been given authority. He's been elected to an office or appointed to leadership positions. There should be honesty and integrity and uprightness there. I'm looking where the righteousness should be, and the vine is empty. Where there should be honesty, there is deceit. Where there should be humbleness and humility, there is pride and arrogance. I'm looking at the vineyard, but the vine is empty. Do you not have days where you pick up the newspaper and think there must not be any good people left in our world anywhere at all? Where there should be love and grace and compassion, there is only hatred and anger and condemnation. How long is it? What do we go, about 3 weeks between mass shootings in our country now? Maybe 4 on a good month? There's so much political hatred and religious hatred and racial hatred in our country that we just decide, you know what? I'll just kill a few folks. Not that you would ever do that, but don't you sometimes look at our world and go, what is happening? Don't you sometimes look at the things that are said and the things people do and go, there should be godliness there. Where is it? Heck, you can even look in the church. There should be any place where there is grace. There should be any place where there is forgiveness. There should be any place where there is compassion. There should be any place where there is hope. It is in the church. We are the people of agape love, the people who love like Jesus. And yet far too often the church is a place of judgment and condemnation and hypocrisy. Right? Some of you felt that before. You've been on the receiving end of that judgment and condemnation. And so I don't believe Micah 7 was written about us. Man, I read through those verses. The summer fruit has been gathered after the gleaning of the grape harvest, and I find no grape clusters to eat. Godly people have vanished from the land. There's no one upright among the people. All of them wait in ambush to shed blood. They hunt each other with a net. Both hands are good at accomplishing evil. The official and the judge demand a bribe. The powerful men communicate their evil desire and they plot it together. The best among them is like a briar. The most upright is worse than a hedge of thorns. The day of your watchman, the day of your punishment is coming. At this time, their panic is here. Do not rely on a friend. Don't trust a close companion. Seal your mouth from the woman who lies in your arm. Surely a son considers his father a fool. A daughter opposes her mother, and a daughter-in-law is against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies are the men of his own household. Even that last part. How many broken homes are in our country today? How much abuse takes place in the home? Verbal abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse. How many people do you know who have just dealt with the scars and the anger and the resentment that divorce brings? How many folks have committed adultery? How many kids just hate their parents and do everything they can to hurt them? That passage just reads like it could have come out of the newspaper. And so while it's not about us, I think it is for us. And so before I read the next couple of verses, I want you to know that this whole idea of the world being a dark place is not new. Micah's writing 2,600 years ago. And you could read that passage in the 1st century. You could read it in the 10th century. You could read it in the 21st century. And it would be applicable. Because we live in a world where sin has always been rampant. Where death and disease and temptation and hurt and pride and arrogance always have had power. And there have been men for thousands of years who have looked around and go, God, what are you doing? This place is a mess. God, would you fix this? And I just want to read to you Micah's solution. This is verse 7. But I will look to the Lord. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. I will look to the Lord. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. Micah's solution to the whole problem is, God, this is a mess. But you're still God. And you're still good. And so I'm going to keep praying, and I'm going to keep serving, and I'm going to keep following, and I'm going to wait until the day you make things right. And it may be today, and it may be tomorrow, and it may be 1,000 years from now. But you are a God who is faithful, and you are a God who is good, and you are a God who I trust, and I will wait on my God, for he will answer me. Do you know that is what this season is supposed to be? You know, we sang it's Christmas because I asked her to, because I think it's a catchy little song, and we're going to use that bridge as our closing time in a little bit, just to kind of celebrate the joy of Christmas. But it's not Christmas yet. It's not Christmas for another 23 days. And the church calendar today is the first day of Advent. It is a season of waiting. I talked with we had the girls on Wednesday night at Merge, and traditionally, Advent's a season where you like put things off. You don't eat anything sweet during Advent. No dessert, no pie, no cookie. Some of you are like cringing. You're like, I'm glad we don't celebrate Advent here. I'm pie this afternoon. You know why you don't eat pie? So that on Christmas Day, when you celebrate with your family, it is this luxury. And you spend 23 days looking forward to that day when I celebrate. Because Advent is to be a season of waiting. It is to remind us that though we live in a dark world, and some of you right now, some of you are dealing with physical disease. And some of you are dealing with emotional turmoil. Some of you are grieving death. Some of you are overwhelmed at work. Some of you are struggling financially. Some of you are having problems in your families. And you're sitting in the midst of the darkness and going, God, what are you doing here? And you need to know Advent is for you, because Advent is the season where we line up right beside Micah and we say, I'm going to wait right here, God, and you are my God, and you are good, and I trust you to keep your promises. And I will wait until you hear my prayer. And verse 8 says this, do not rejoice over me, my enemy. Though I have fallen, I will stand up. Though I sit in the darkness, the Lord will be my light. What a great Christmas prayer. God, though our world is full of suffering, you will be my light. God, I'm struggling right now. I'm dealing with death right now, God, but you will be my light. God, I've got this temptation and this sin in my life that I can't handle, but you will be my light. Though I sit in the darkness, the Lord will be my light. I want to show you something. We started with our little candle, and I told you the reason that you preached through Micah 7. It's because a little tiny candle like that, it doesn't give off much light when all the other lights are on. And so if you happen to live in a world where you think that everything is hunky-dory and there's no suffering and nobody's dealing with anything, the light doesn't really mean much. But when you begin to study and understand, every person you meet in your life is going through something. Everybody that you talk to has something happening in their life. Everyone in this room has something going on. And your struggle is different from my struggle. But the reality is, not much has changed since Micah wrote. We live in a dark world. And as we begin to realize just how dark things are, that little light that didn't shine much at all, it becomes the very thing we hope for. It becomes the very thing we anchor our promises on. It becomes the source of light in a dark world. Becomes the thing we most desperately need. In the season of Advent, they light 4 candles. And the first one is the candle of hope. The candle that says, God, I don't care how dark the world is. I'm looking to you. And though I sit in the darkness, the Lord is my light. So we're going to sing to close a song that we sang earlier during service. It's my favorite. I'm weird and morbid, I know, but it's my favorite Christmas carol. Because it's the only one we sing that really expresses that longing. All the others are celebratory, which is cool and great. We sing Joy to the World and Hark the Herald Angels Sing and all these great songs of celebration. But I don't know, I still long for the day when Jesus comes and makes everything right. I still long for the day when there is no more darkness And so we sing this song that was written by monks thousands of years ago. They used to chant it. O come, Emmanuel. Come and save us. Come and rescue us. God, we're waiting on you. And I will sit in the darkness and wait on the Lord to be my light. So we're going to sing this as a time of prayer as we close service together. Why don't you stand and join me this morning?